Hello everybody, this is the Adafruit CircuitPython Weekly for July 9th, 2018. I'm Scott, I go by Tan Newt online, and I work on CircuitPython for Adafruit. Every week we meet at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern to get together as a community and talk about what we're working on, whether that's a project you're doing for fun or working on core code in CircuitPython. We want to hear all about it. This meeting has 4 parts to it. The first part is a state of CircuitPython, which I'll just go over. It's a chance, there's a skip script I run that pulls some statistics about how the projects are, as a whole is going. So I'll quickly do that first. After that, we'll do a section called Hug Reports, which is a chance to say thank you to other people in the community for their work that they've done. We do that in a round robin where I will start and then go down the list and circle back on the voice channel. If you're text only or just lurking, just let me know and I will skip over you. There are a few people that can't make the meeting, and so they give status updates and hug reports before, so I will read those off after myself as well. And then we'll do status updates after that, which is a very similar format where it's just what you've been working on the last week and what you plan on working on going forwards. It's a really good way to keep track of what everybody's working on, but also give tips and tricks or suggestions as to how the work that people are working on gets done. And then lastly, we'll have a discussion section that's very open-ended and just is all about what is the more major topics that came up earlier in the meeting that we want to spend some more time talking about. And so that's it. If you want to join, it's a public meeting. We hold it on our Discord channel in the voice chat every week. And to join our Discord, you go to the URL adafru.it/discord, and that will dump you into the Discord. You can find the CircuitPython text channel there, where most people hang out the whole week, and then we're in the voice channel during the specific time, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, when we run this meeting. This meeting is recorded and goes up on the Adafruit YouTube channel after the fact. It's youtube.com/Adafruit. And along with that, it's a video recording of the Discord window, and it's I do notes as well. Well, Katney's doing notes, and there are time codes in there as well. So if you want to skip around to the interesting sections, that's where that data will be. Okay, so let's get started. I'll take a time code, and then we'll jump into our first section. So the first section is the state of CircuitPython. This is not only the core code base, but also the libraries around CircuitPython. And I took these last night, these stats last night before I actually did some pull requests. So these numbers are a bit lower and a little bit out of date. But so on the pull request side, we had 7 pull requests merged from 3 different authors. The Kitty, who's Mike Barella in voice chat, D. Halbert, Brent Rue. We had 3 reviewers, myself, Dan, and Brent as well. We have 7 new PRs from 4 authors, Arturo, Carter, and myself and Katney. That, as of last night, this number's a little old, but we had 14 open pull requests. Please take a look at those. There's a few open that could get some attention, so take a look at the notes when I post them to the Discord later if you want more details. Issues wise, we've had 5 closed issues by 4 people and 15 opened by 9 people for a total of 133 open issues. This is a bit more than we had in the previous weeks. Part of this is I opened a number of issues in terms of and did some rework around what we've been calling 4.0. Kind of like 2 threads to 4.0, and so I actually removed the 4.0 milestone and split it apart. I guess I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, so we're gaining issues. For CircuitPython itself, I'm not too worried about the issue load that we have there, but I do feel like we could do better about keeping track of issues on library repos. So if you want to help with that, please take a look at the notes afterwards. Download-wise, the unstable release 3.0 RC1 was released last week, and we've had 184 downloads. Some folks did some really good testing around that. Major boards, Metro M4, Circuit Playground Express, downloads-wise. And then 2.3.1 is our latest stable, and we broke 4,000 total downloads for that as well, which is really cool. And then overall, I would say we're in this point where 3.0 is like super, super close to done. And that means that master is very kind of relatively unstable, but it means we can experiment with a lot of different things. So it's fun. It's a fun time. We can use a lot of help. Just if you're not using 3.0, please be using 3.0. Let us know if you find us any major issues. Otherwise, I think it's about ready. So yeah, state of CircuitPython 3.0 is almost done. 4.0 is just starting. Super exciting. Let's move on to Hug Reports. So Hug Reports is a chance for everybody to say a quick thank you to people in the community for the work that they've done. For those of us who are in here every week, it's kind of just within the last week, but can also be more broad if this is your first meeting. So what I'll do is I will start, and then I'll go down the list. So 3bits, you would be next, and I'll also read for the people that weren't able to make it. Okay, just lurking. 3bits is lurking. Okay, I'll skip over you. No worries. Thanks for joining, for sure. Okay, so I'll start. First, I want to say thank you to Arturo. Wasn't able to make the meeting, but has been doing a lot of really cool, really good PRs for the NRF52 port, which is one of the directions that we're going currently, which is really helpful. Thanks to Summersoft for keeping an eye on Discord over the weekend and giving some people some feedback on what they posted. I really appreciate that. And then lastly, Katney, thank you for note-taking. And I forgot to take a time code for myself. And then let's see, Roy wasn't able to make it, and just said group hugged everybody. Arturo also isn't gonna make it and said hugs all around, especially for Hot Tack for working on NRF52 bootloader. So yeah, thanks to everybody there, and we'll go to Andon. Hug report, not related to CircuitPython, but Grays has been helping a lot of people in Discord, and as always, a group hug because you all are awesome. Yeah, hug reports for non-CircuitPython stuff is definitely welcome too. It's a broader thing than that. Okay, Brent.
Scott for Blinka work, continued work with Blinka, and the CircuitPython team for pushing towards that 3.0 goal.
Awesome. Thank you, Brent. Carter.
Yeah, a few things related to some stuff that's come up with the ADS 1X15, which is just an I2C ADC. I'll talk more about that when I get to status.
Okay.
But hug to Lady Ada for coming back on an issue I posted that kind of was ambiguous with like, well, it could do this or this. She said, go this route, which was cool. So could start doing a PR for it.
Right.
And then thanks, hug to Deshipu for starting to review the PR I made for that.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, getting PR reviews on libraries is really, really helpful.
Yeah, and then another quick one to Dan Halbert. He helped me with a few questions I had on the morning of the 4th of July related to code.org Vermata stuff, which was really helpful.
Good, good. Yeah, I forgot we had a day off. I took 4th of July off. Okay, thanks, Carter. C. Grover. Sorry, I'm taking a time code. Did you want to read it off, or should I?
Yeah, I got my mic on today.
Cool.
Well, first of all, hugs to the CircuitPython team, everybody, for the thoroughness of read the docs. I really relied on that, and it's a go-to on my search engine
Hmm.
right now. Big thanks to John Park and Old Crow because I've taken a tangent down the musical synthesizer path that we all do. Once we make a clock and a solder fume extractor, then we start going on these kinds of journeys. And I think everybody's built a synthesizer, but I'm going down this and threatening the stability of my budget. So, but I really appreciate the advice. John Park got me started when he did his Trellis project with the DSP synth, a $20 8-pin dip that really does some great stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then Old Crow shared his modular playground design with me. And matter of fact, it's public. It's out on GitHub.
Mm-hmm.
Really great hardware design, fantastic. And then he included some examples of a MIDI to CV converter and things like that.
Right.
And it really managed to break through some barriers I was facing. So big thanks to both of them as they helped me deplete my budget.
We're terribly efficient at that, aren't we?
It just, yeah, I have to get another job and I'm retired. So,
well, that means you have the time to at least use the things that you buy, which is good.
yeah, but I need to start gigging again so I have a little bit of money coming in for these bad habits. So.
Right. Yeah, totally. Okay, thanks, C. Grover. Dan.
I guess thanks to Lady Ada Lamore and Mike for doing some final testing on the Cricut library, which I was working on fixing some pin mappings and other things last week. That seems to be completely baked now. And I think that's it for my HUD reports right now.
Okay. All right, Dave.
Nothing too specific, just a general HUD report. I guess especially for the 3.0 team, I've been using that quite a bit. It's working great.
Good.
Yeah, that's about it. I've been using CP a lot as usual, not working on it.
No worries. Cool. Thanks. Jerry.
There's the mute button. Just a group hug this week, and yeah, good work all around, and special again appreciation for the Blinka work. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, that was Lady Ada. All right, Katney.
All right, so I have a hug report for John Park, who helped me out this weekend. I couldn't find a WAV file long enough for the example code I was trying to write. And of course, magically, he produced a lovely looping long enough WAV file for me. So that was excellent, and also helped me out with wiring up and giving a lot more detailed explanation on potentiometers. So I learned a lot. And a hug to Summersoft for helping out on Discord this weekend with moderation. Super appreciate it. Thank you very much for taking care of that.
Totally. Can you guys hear the cat? I don't know. She's purring on my lap. Very happy. She's usually unhappy when I'm let me, should we have an interlude? That's Vin's status update. Yeah, she's totally like okay with me talking, which is not usually the case for her. Okay, sorry about that catterlude, maybe. And it'll come up with something better. Old Crow, do you have hug reports? Mike's lurking. Nope. Old Crow's probably lurking as well. Okay, Radomir.
Okay, so hack for construct for diving into programming and learning programming with CircuitPython, which is always great to see. And I'm really impressed by the work going on with the NRF port. So hacks to Jared and Arturo for working on it and making it really interesting platform now.
Who was the first one for?
Construct, I think.
Yes, construct.
Thank you.
Yeah, who's been chatting a bunch. All right, SDW, Scott. Group hug plus kudos to Google for adding Android support to Chrome OS and to the creators of No Root Linux on Android apps. Interesting. Thank you, thank you. And last but not least, Summersoft. So, Summersoft says, Arturo and Hatak for the flurry of NRF work, Mr. McWethy for diving into the PyPy stuff. True. Also, I had forgotten about that. Group hug for any I've missed. Thank you, Summersoft. All right, that was Hug Reports. Thank you, everybody. Now we'll move on to status updates. After I take a time code. Status updates is a chance for everybody to say kind of what they've been working on and any, like what they did in the past week and then what they plan on doing the next week. Thanks for showing up, Radomir. Appreciate it. Radomir has to go. So I'll start for myself and I'll take a time code as well. You might hear that I'm typing slowly. I talked a little bit about last week, my hand bothering me a bit, so I was changing keyboards and typing language or typing layouts. Still in the process of that. I'm getting a little bit faster, but still quite slow. So thanks again to Katney for helping me with notes. If anybody wants to see how notes go kind of live, there I posted the link earlier in the CircuitPython text chat, so feel free to lurk there as well. Besides that, I did get some work done, which is good. I released 3.0 RC1, which is the second release candidate. Haven't heard any major issues with it, which is really nice. And I think Dan's going to talk a bit more about that a little bit later. I started working, or started getting myself set up to test the NRF52. So I did that. I got it building on my, I started building everything on a different PC. And so I got that loading with the J-Link on the NRF and starting to play around with USB stuff of that. I'm not going to dive super deep into NRF myself. Dan's going to do more of that. But I did that and I fixed the SVD tool for loading the SVD file for NRF. I made a pull request last week for that just because that's part of the workflow that I like. So I found one bug there. And then I also submitted a pull request to the UF2 converter in the UF2 repo to make it Python 3 rather than Python 2. Miha asked if it worked in Python 2.7 as well as 3, so I'll probably actually take a bit of a look and just make sure that it works both in 2 and 3, because some people will still have only 2 set up. So I'm going to do that this week. I'm going to do a little bit more work on the NRF USB stuff. I just want to get my Beagle set up so I can see what's happening over the wire. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll probably circle back to the game console stuff. In particular, I want to start working on the audio side of things, having multiple voices at once and being able to generate different types of tones and stuff, so we can make lots of chip tunes with it. So I'll probably start working on that as well, but kind of also spending more time just more broadly planning, since we're in this phase where like 3.0 is basically done, figuring out like what the next iterations of the 3 series are going to be, plus what 4.0 and 5.0 potentially are as well. So you'll see that in the issues last week, I renamed for the 4.0 milestone to Bluetooth, moved the non-Bluetooth stuff out either into a video game category or a 3X category, which is like the stuff that we want to do soon after 3.0 is released, that are kind of odds and ends. So working on doing that and kind of getting everybody going in the direction that we want in terms of after 3.0. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. I'll now move to come on, cat. She's trying to play with my headphone cord. Go away. She fell off my lap. You would think she would be a lot more coordinated. Okay, time code 20. So folks who couldn't make it. Roy said no progress this week. Has been doing other stuff. Arturo said working on NRF as usual. Want to do 994 and 995 this week. Those are 2 issues, I believe. I don't remember exactly what they are. But Arturo's been doing lots of really good work there. Jeff Epler says, I want to report that P. Falcon made major progress on the UZ Lab crash fixes this weekend, reworking my proposed changes for minimum code size impact. Once the fixes make it into his master branch, I'll make a PR to update CircuitPython to use the fixed version. Let me know if you want that in 3.0, otherwise I'll target master only. And I got back to Jeff and said I prefer master. And then lastly, for folks who couldn't make it, Entol said, hey folks, Mu 1.0 beta 17 is out. Details are here. And I'll post that in the chat right now. So for all of those of you who use Mu, please update the latest version and help find bugs, as so many of you are really good at doing. Okay, let's do the round robin. So 3bits is lurking, so we'll go to Andon. Andon says, was way faster than me. Status update. Preparing for BronyCon in a few weeks. Prepping up digibadges. I have 30-ish 328Ps to solder, 38 1.8 TFTs to solder, and 36 buttons to replace. And then I have to upload the programming for 50 of them. It'll give me about 75 to sell at the convention, and then I have an EL wire project I'm working on too. But that's a, in quotes, secret project with an artist friend of mine, so no leaks yet. Awesome. That sounds fun. Brent.
I've been doing some IO stuff, but I've actually touched CircuitPython for once, so it's not only I'm doing Python, but not CircuitPython. I've been doing some Blinka IO examples. I think they'll be out later this week. We're updating the IO basic guides that Todd did a long time ago to be compatible with the new API for IO and Blinka, which is going to be cool. And on that type of news, I added in, with the help of the IO team, time feeds. So if you want to get, like, if you don't have peripherals, like for an MQTT poll or subscribe, rather, you can subscribe to hours. You can subscribe to, there's like an ISO format as well. So really useful for things like I want to do X action every so minutes or hours or milliseconds or seconds.
Right.
We can do that now.
Huh. Interesting. Good work on the IO stuff.
Thanks. And if you have any other ideas for topics or enhancements to IO, just shoot them to me and I'll get it to the team.
Okay. Yeah, that goes for everybody. Awesome. Thanks, Brent. Carter.
No, unmute first. Yeah, so this ADS 1x15 issue came up in Arduino first, where someone was reporting the conversion values weren't looking too good. It turns out it's a pretty simple thing. It's just not the way the current library is waiting for the conversion to complete is just a simple delay, and it kind of used to work and now it doesn't work. So something probably has just changed subtly with timing. So you looked at the CircuitPython library, because basically I just ported the Arduino library when I wrote that.
Right.
And the same issue existed there. So I posted a quick issue about it. Like I said, Lady Adis gave direction on which way to go, and I put a PR in for it that basically converts from a delay to just polling, because there is a register bit you can look at that says the conversion is complete.
Right.
So the new PR is put in place to do that. And looking at the current state of the conversation this morning, it looks like we're close. We're just down to one of Deshbu's comments was the fact that I'm using pass instead of a time.sleep in the polling loop, because there's really nothing to do in the polling loop.
Right.
And once I get that wrapped up, should be good to go. So I think we'll talk about that in the later discussion thing.
Okay.
So that's it for status.
Cool. Thank you. All right. C. Grover.
Well, I finished the Blues Playground Learning Guide project. Originally, I wrote it in 2.3.1 and ran into some memory issues when I converted it to 3.0.0, the newest release. And it had something to do with allocating an audio buffer because I was playing sounds through it.
Mm-hmm.
Once I figured that out, and optimized the code a little bit, it works great in both. So I'm pretty happy with the way that turned out.
Good.
I've got 2 versions of the CircuitPython powered musical synth, both done with a Feather M0 Express and then a Trinket M0.
Mm-hmm.
Works great with MIDI. I've got the modular synth stuff working now. And I posted something earlier. The video I posted was a challenge from a friend of mine. He says, yeah, that's great. You build a synthesizer. He said, can it play Washington State's song? Which, by the way, is Louie Louie, unofficially. So I had to prove that, but that's the proof of concept for him too. But these are my gateway drugs into getting to analog modular synths, like I mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
Next project is to put those in enclosures and racks, and then start buying some equipment, and then work on the galvanometer project. I've got a few things done with that already. Just have to wrap that one up. And then I've got an heirloom cuckoo clock that I need to fix. And, the mainspring broke in it, so it's perfect for gutting and replacing it with a Feather M4 CircuitPython real-time clock, and maybe a Cricket to run the original whistles and the gong that are still working in it, and probably will work forever.
Right.
And then I'm going to play around with the trellis and rotary encoder bank idea for CV gate and MIDI compatible synthesizer input.
Mm-hmm.
I read through Kattni's learning guide on the rotary encoders, really well done, by the way, and could see some projects popping out of that one. And then I listed my interrupters in there, and we can probably all relate to those.
Yeah. I really like eating and sleeping as interrupters.
Yeah, well, it's summer here, and all of our neighbors' vines have decided to leap the fence into our yard. So,
So you're fighting a war against vines?
Yeah, they have a mind of their own.
Well, good luck.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, see you over. Dan.
So earlier last week, I worked a lot on getting the last bugs out of the Cricket library, and there was some pin mapping problems, and it was sort of all the way down to the seesaw code that runs on the Crickets. So I just had to figure out how that worked. So that's all fixed up now, and it's been tested by Mike and Lady Ada, and it's all set to go. And they've rewritten a lot of the examples in the current learn guides for that. So that's done. There were some issues. The Windows 7 drivers package didn't actually include its EM4 and some other newer boards, and so I'm working on that. And it was giving errors because we had added web USB capability even though we don't use it. And then the installer was complaining that there was a device that didn't work. So I figured out a workaround for that. So I have it out for testing with somebody who in the forums who is interested in getting its EM4 to work under Arduino on Windows 7.
Right.
And I'm going to start working more in earnest on NRF52. Now, the first thing is just to get some Travis builds that are not working again. So that's, oh yeah, and I made a learn guide about a nightlight.
Yeah, I like that project.
I made a nightlight out of a Gemma by putting a while true do nothing in, so it wouldn't pulse, and that was my nightlight. That was my 1 minute nightlight. Yeah. But then I wrote it so it was a little fancier.
Ah,
So
fancy.
change colors and intensity.
Okay.
You could look at.
And do you want to talk about 3.0 during discussion?
Yeah, let's talk about the 3.0 final release during the weeds section. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Dan. Let's go to Dave.
Okay. Yeah, I think I mentioned last time I was on here that there was a book in the planning stage on CircuitPython
Mm-hmm.
that Blitz and I were going to do. That has been called off, primarily, or only. It got approval and everything, but Blitz and I have both gotten a lot busier since that process started.
Right.
She had new stuff at work going on, and now I'm writing guides for Adafruit full time. So, and part of that is Liz and I talked about it, and instead of doing it as a book, we thought, it's still valuable to do, but doing it as a series of guides is probably going to be maybe a little better even.
Mm-hmm.
Having a content there with all the other content, there's already a lot of CircuitPython content being generated, so
Right.
it might just fit in a bit nicer. But especially now with the M4s, my view on that is that you can actually write some seriously complex Python code.
Yeah.
Running on the M4s. So now instead of just a little, set up in a loop to do something, you can, get into some nice programs with a lot of classes and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
there's more material sort of beyond the beginner level that should be published. So I'll be doing some of that.
Yeah, it that reminds me, like when I was doing the Celeste stuff, I took about like maybe 8,000 lines of code and split it up into like 20 files, and it was so much code that it took like 17 seconds to just get going. So it's an interesting challenge that we should. I've been thinking a lot about of how to make the iteration loop quicker, even if you have lots and lots of code like that.
Yeah.
So cool.
So that's it for me. I'm in my guides. I'm using CircuitPython as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
I actually started playing just now with a Feather Huzzah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to see if I can do that code in CircuitPython. I just got that loaded up now.
Okay.
So
cool.
Yeah, that's
all
it.
right. Thanks a lot, Dave.
Okay, bye.
All right, Jerry.
Some very exciting non-CircuitPython stuff this week. I got to dig a new hole for an outhouse at a campsite. That was really productive. And as far as CircuitPython, been spending. I finally got around to updating the RFM69 driver to fix a known bug in the frequency setting and clean up a few other things. So I posted that this morning.
Okay.
And I took my SPG 60, SPG 30 gas sensor and installed it next to the cat's litter box. I'm trying to calibrate it to see if it will give me a good warning about the state of the litter box.
Huh.
I'll know how that works.
Yeah, that would be a good guide.
Not quite sure how volatile that is, but we'll see. We'll see how it works out.
I'm pretty sure it's pretty volatile based on my cat's litter box.
And then when it comes to in the weed section, I wanted to ask some questions about some potential issue I've got to put forward about the some recent NRF52 stuff, but I'm trying to decide how to handle it.
Okay.
I've been playing with that and testing things now. And
yeah.
So.
Yeah, good. It's good to have lots of discussions as we get rolling on that. I know Arturo's already rolling on it, but as the rest of us catch up to him.
Yep. I just wanted a question, just how to proceed, but.
Okay.
And,
we can do that.
I tested the new AMPI, and it seems to be working quite well. So thanks to Garth for putting that out.
Oh, cool. All right. Thanks, Jerry. Kattni.
Yeah. So the Itsy Bitsy M4 guide is now updated to include the welcome and the essentials guide. I don't remember when I did that, so this may have already happened. I ran through all the code on the essentials guide with the Itsy M4, and now I'm running through it with the Feather M4 just to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And cleaning up some spacing issues and just, stuff that I missed the first time around, and also updating the wording in the actual guide, which I didn't do when I ran through it with ITSE. So there are places where it says, oh, do this for all these other boards and do this for the Metro M4 Express, and that's the only one it mentions.
Right.
So I expanded that to be more general to include the other M4 boards that we now have. And I'm working through doing that. So I have my table here that I have a bunch of things I check off for each page. So I have to go through that. And also adding new wiring diagrams. The stuff for the M4 boards wasn't in the wiring diagram program yet, but it is now. So I'll be able to do that. Let's see what else. I updated the Feather. There's an upcoming Feather M4 guide, which is updated with the welcome and essential stuff now. That'll be waiting on whenever Lady Ada gets that published.
Right.
And I deployed the new code of conduct to Discord. So that's now in our code of conduct channel, so we can refer to that. Right. We probably still want to discuss how we're going to do that with libraries. I know Summersoft was looking into that.
Okay.
So I'm now running like I said, the Feather M4 through the Essentials Guide code, and I'm working on an audio out page for the Essentials Guide. The code is done. I've started working on the page, so that's going to be now working on wiring diagrams. All the wiring diagrams for that and explaining the code. It's super simple. It just explains how to generate a tone and play it back. It turns out it's painfully loud through headphones on analog. So we wired a potentiometer into it to use as basically a volume knob, because even putting in code to control generating the tone required lowering it so far that it was kind of ridiculous. So now we have a little knob and it works much better.
Cool.
So that'll all be going into the Essentials Guide over the course of the next week or week and a half or however long that takes.
Right.
And that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Mike and Old Crow are looking, I believe. So that means STW Scott is up next.
Hello.
Hello.
So I missed last week. I realized after I spoke 2 weeks ago that I didn't actually tell you what I had done. So I'll try to kind of explain how that works in with what I did last week.
Okay.
So I had been wanting to add multiple input file support for generating hex files for the microbit with UFlash, and it just looked too clumsy to shoehorn that into the UFlash command. So I decided what I ought to do is kind of conceptually split it, leave the UFlash command for just flashing to the microbit, and then make a separate command. And I thought that I would have to create a separate PY file to do that. When I was done with the programming and got on to looking into how to update everything else and started looking at the setup.py file, I noticed the command setting and the entry point settings. I thought, well, that probably means I could have done that without creating a separate file. And the separate command I created, I called it hexify, because that just to me seemed like the most obvious word.
Right.
Two issues there was one thing I realized afterward that I looked at someone else's pull request, and Entol had said that this other guy had made separate files, and he said that he would prefer it to be one file so you can just drop it in like Moo uses UFlash, and the Thani microbit plugin uses UFlash, and you just drop one file in and it gives it support. And then one of his functions is called hexlify with an L in it. No idea why there's an L there. It doesn't make any sense to me, but I thought maybe he's not going to like the fact that I used something that's so similar. But I was kind of like, well, do I want to reopen this or do I want to get on to other things? But then when I realized I was going to have to be flying to a funeral in South Dakota, I was going to have some time on a plane.
Right.
And I could do something. And I also wanted to just kind of see what I could actually get done running Linux on Android on Chrome OS.
Right.
And and I was able to get some things done. So I made a new, I put it all back together into one file, and the separate command I created was called py to hex with a numeral 2.
Right.
And so so that's all set now. So now I think I'm finally done, unless there's any bugs found or Entol wants me to change anything.
Right.
That's done. So I'll just have to get a new pull request out to him, and
Okay.
I've got a release if anyone wants to look at it.
Right, which is microbit with mu.
Yeah. Well, uFlash for microbit.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks for the update, and sorry to hear you had to go to a funeral.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, Summersoft. Says frequency module in, still no real fix for M4 readings. Refactored the fail gracefully loop to not rely on calling for the value. That approach works for a blocking loop, but would lead to lockup otherwise. New approach turns off capture in the interrupt handler, but doesn't raise the exception until the value is requested. Little Leslie amp, no movement. General, waited a week or so for DigiKey to get the NRF52 DK back in stock. They're now scheduled to restock at the end of the month. Sad face. I broke down and got one from Mouser, plus a microchip MGC3030 gesture controller sensor to play with in the future. Got to keep the stable ready for the chance that I ever finish anything. I know what you mean. Code of conduct in libraries, git patch/am is a possible route. Still looking into how to further automate, but might just hand jam it locally. Yeah, put on some tunes and just do it yourself. I know how that goes. Cool. Well, thanks a lot, Summersoft, as always. And thank you, everybody, for the status updates. That is the status update section. And let's move on to what we've called the discussion/in the weeds section. I'll take a time code, 4230-ish. So Carter, you had stuff you wanted to talk about first?
Sure, I'll go first. It's going to be interesting because this is kind of like Dan's nightlight kind of can come into play here because he's got the exact same similar thing going on. So I'll post a little patch of code here because it all comes down to this very simple thing going on. So what Radomir Distribu was pointing out was pass can really lock down the CPU potentially versus instead in the body of the loop having a time.sleep. And that was kind of new to me. It's kind of like, I thought pass would just kind of do that. So this kind of gets, I guess, into nitty gritty details under the hood of exactly what's going to go on. And I kind of, he commented on that about right before the 4th of July. And I really was off the grid until basically last night. So I'm only just now coming back to this.
Right.
Did some Googling this morning on that, and it seems like there is a lot of conversation around that. Like pass does pretty much just instantly go back to the loop. So CPU usage and whatnot gets really locked up, and sprinkling in a time.sleep fixes it. Just change the pass to a time.sleep.
Yeah, there was a misconception about, or the way MicroPython and CircuitPython used to work early before we even called it CircuitPython, I think, is that you would need to call sleep, otherwise we wouldn't do the things we need to do in the background. But I am 95% sure that's not the case anymore. Like, we should be running the stuff in the background every step of the VM. We take a chance to do that. So I think pass is fine. And pass...
Well, I think a lot of the stuff you come across is from CPython land and non-MCUs, like on full computers. So if we want to like carry over best practices from that world into CircuitPython world, I'm not sure.
Like if your driver was used with Blinka on a Raspberry Pi, then yeah, it would be better to sleep.
Or another example I was thinking of was like with the ESP32s and 8266s and whatnot, where they have a watchdog timer. Like I've seen some examples possibly where a pass will make the watchdog timer go off where a time.sleep won't.
Well, what is the amount of delay that's necessary in this particular case?
Well, see, that's my follow-on question, and I've got that in the pull request discussion, and Radomir hasn't responded yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've seen some people just do time.sleep 0, and I'm not sure if you need that or if you just need some minimal amount, because what I want to do is find the tiniest amount, because I don't want to have that. I want to have that loop go as fast as possible. As soon as the conversion is complete, be done and move on.
Right.
But I mean, for this particular sensor, if you measured it, how long does it typically take?
Oh, good question. And I actually haven't done that.
Because like the temperature sensors, some of them take like a second or several seconds or something like that. And so then it doesn't really matter very much. You could make it be a tenth of a second.
Right. My guess is this is pretty fast. And also it's variable because you can change the sampling rate, and it kind of will vary with the sampler. In fact, that's what the current delay logic was. It wasn't just a hard-coded delay. It had some simple math that was like reciprocal of sampling rate, etc. And it used to work, but now it doesn't work.
Well, I'd say just measure it.
And then use that, right?
And then use that, or use it, add the tiny bit to that. And if it takes longer, well, then you'll take twice or something. But,
I was thinking of making it
just a delay that long.
I was thinking of making it just simply the lowest that's possible with CircuitPython, because there's that resolution issue with time.sleep.
Yeah.
And I've looked at my current driver, and it was kind of silly. It's like I wrote it before I realized that was a problem, because I add this little fudge factor to it that's like 0.00001, which is below that threshold of time.sleep resolution. So effectively, it was doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I would just say, yeah. I mean, I would pick a time that you think is, if it's. We have a way of sleep for a small number of microseconds, but it does a busy wait loop. So that's really for precise timing, more like for one wire or something. In this case, you want to be asleep for long enough. I mean, I would say do it, because if this driver is going to be used somewhere else, then a busy wait loop is not such a good idea. So like if the sensor failed, then you wouldn't necessarily want your program to start consuming 100% CPU, whether it was CircuitPython or not. So, and maybe you might even put a timeout in it and say like, well, I shouldn't do this more than 10 times if the sensor is.
That was kind of another side discussion. My first PR was a very simple pass at this, and I pointed out in my PR message or whatever the fact that there's no timeout. Maybe that could be a future.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say measure it and pick a similar time. But it's true that right now time.sleep does microsecond waiting fine. It didn't used to. In 2.x it didn't, I think. But in 3.x it will wait for sub-millisecond intervals. It'll do it just with a busy wait loop.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's why I was asking, like, if this is several milliseconds, then it makes sense. But I would say in any case, don't hang. If the sensor fails or somebody unplugged it, it would be better if it failed eventually, as opposed to just looping.
Right. That's where the timeout would come in.
Yeah. So just like go through the loop 10 times for I in range of 10 or something. Do the sleep, and then if you fall through with nothing, then.
Right.
What will happen is that you'll try to read and you won't get anything back, or you get junk back or something.
Yeah, you would get basically junk values back.
So you can't tell if it's failed, right? Because you're just going to get junk values.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, so then there's no reason for a timeout. Then I would just say just do it for at least long enough so that it works 100% reliably when the sensor is working.
Well, I guess I figured the timeout would be the failsafe for if something went wrong with the sensor. Because all that's doing is basically looking for a bit to flip in a register. If something happened and
okay,
that never is sit there waiting forever, then the timeout would kick in.
Yeah, then that makes sense. Yeah, so I would say yeah, but just check for that in case it's really slow or something. If you can think of some failure mode, like wait 2 or 3 times or something. I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on this, but it would be nice for the driver not to hang if the sensor broke or was unplugged.
Right.
But so that's kind of a secondary thing. So let's assume the sensor's all fine and happy and it's not broken. Then there's this discussion of pass versus time.sleep, and then what the actual sleep value is. And Scott, it sounds like you're originally saying you thought pass was okay.
Well, so
it will in CircuitPython. It doesn't screw things up.
But it used to, and so there was a misconception for a while that you needed to do sleep, and that's what I was thinking that Radomir was thinking about, of like if you don't call sleep enough, you starve the background stuff. But that shouldn't be the case. The only time that we see that now is if we actually have C code that does busy waiting and we don't call the background stuff, then we can still have that happen. But if you're busy waiting in the loop in CircuitPython, you won't have that problem. But the sleep thing is interesting, both because you're essentially saving cycles in CPython because you don't have to you're slowing your busy wait loop down, because you're sleeping, letting other things happen rather than having to spin in the loop really quickly. And that's potentially a good thing going forwards for CircuitPython when we finally get around to making sleep actually sleep, is we could actually have if you're doing a sensor and you're polling, like you could actually sleep for 1/10 of a second while the sensor goes, for example.
Right.
So I think sleep is a good way to go.
What would a sleep value of 0 do? Would it effectively be the same as pass or not?
I wouldn't do that, no. I would. Yeah, if you're going to do sleep 0, just do pass in my mind. But I would
say actually figure out what the sleep value should be and put it in.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too, Dan. But I had come across some sleep 0 stuff I'd seen, but how legit that was.
I think that's a CPython artifact. I think that it's not a general case. I wouldn't pay any attention to that basically. So
yeah, I would actually do like 1/10 of the time you expect. Like if it takes.
Right, because the sleep shouldn't be the full time, because the loop will just keep spinning. I should kind of divide the expected time into a smaller chunk.
Right, that's the way I would do it. Like if it takes 150 milliseconds, I would do 15 millisecond sleeps or whatever.
Right, exactly.
And then because then the worst case is not double, like Dan was suggesting.
Yeah.
Right. It has a chance to actually kick out when the conversion completes, not sleep.
Right. If you can tell that it's not done yet, then you can check it again. If it's a lot of work to check whether it's done, like you have to do a whole bunch of I2C stuff or something, yeah, maybe don't check it quite as often or something, because you're going to be monopolizing the I2C bus, right? Is this an I2C sensor?
Yeah, it is. And yeah,
so if you had other sensors on there, we don't have time sharing on the bus right now, but you might eventually, so that you wouldn't want to monopolize the bus by checking too often.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I'll go that route. I may defer. I'll think about the timeout, the secondary thing of like what happens if the sensor's broken. That could be an additional PR and issue down the road.
Totally.
Okay.
Just to get something simple in place to fix this current issue, I may do. Yeah, kind of what you're suggesting, Dan. I'll do some measurements, see what it actually is, and throw in a time.sleep for that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks.
Thanks, Carter. Let's move on. Dan, you had release stuff to talk about?
So we could publish an RC.2. The only changes since RC.1, I looked at the commit list,
Mm-hmm.
is that I updated the Cricut library. That's the only change.
Right.
So we could just short circuit this and say, okay, this is just 3.0, 3.00. Do we read and, sort of the official rules of a release is that of a professional release is that you do a final release candidate, which if nobody complained about it, it would be merely retagged as the final. In this particular case, the only commits are a submodule update. There is no other code changes, literally.
Right.
So we could do a release today,
yeah,
or something if we wanted to. So that was.
So the real question is how does everybody feel about 3.0 release or a stable release today or tomorrow?
I think it's great. I mean, I've run it myself on multiple projects. I know other people have. I think we're good.
All right, we're getting thumbs up.
Okay. So you or I will do a release today or tomorrow then.
Yeah.
In time for Wednesday, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good, and then we'll hit the newsletter next week with the 3.0 stable release.
Yeah.
All right, everybody seems on board with that, which is awesome. Okay, so let's plan that. We won't. So officially, we will not do RC2. We will do a 3.0. And then we will release that as a stable release, and then kind of a follow-up item for us should then be figuring out with a little more in terms of updating all of the shipping boards to 3.0, which would be good, and then people won't be using 2.0 anymore.
In read the docs, I guess we should make a 3.x, or should we continue to just point people to latest?
My plan will be I'll do a 3x and then I'll make that the default, just like I did with 2x.
Okay, sounds good.
We don't want people to use 2.0 anymore. Once 3.0 is out.
We'll encourage them to update.
Yeah. We want to deprecate it.
Should stay updated anyway. We ran into an issue yesterday where we had a board that James hadn't updated since we fixed the power issue, where if you bobble the power, it wipes the board.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so the board was wiped, and he was like, what happened? And I'm like, you haven't updated in a very long time.
Yep. I actually, I think my fiance Becca was the first person to use CircuitPython in a project, basically.
Yeah.
And she did it, the kombucha controller project. And I think it's downstairs on prototype Feather M0 hardware. And I think it's 0.9 something. Like it's before the 1.0 release.
Yeah, nice.
And my keyboard, I think, is an old release as well. But that is kind of the nice thing about CircuitPython is like it can work as an appliance where you just don't update it if you want to do that. Okay, Jerry, you had something.
Yeah, actually, I think I just found the main issue I was looking for. I was worried about, but it raises another question.
Okay.
So what I found was I was doing some testing with the master build now, the current master, with the NRF52 updates, and I have this STMP 610 resistive touchscreen on a little TFT screen.
Right.
And I use that for sort of my baseline testing to make sure things are still working. And when I ran it, I noticed that I was getting really weird results on my the STMP 610. It was running, but the data was all garbled. It was all things are coming in out of order and getting really screwed up. And so the tracking of being able to track where you were touching the screen was completely confused. So I went back and verified that it worked properly on an M0 and it worked properly under 3.x. So clearly there's an issue with the SPI, and so I tried it under I2C, and it worked fine. So then I realized and looked at the code, and it turns out the default baud rate for the SPI for the STMP610 is 100K. I don't know why, but it is. So I raised it to a megahertz, and now it works fine. So I don't know. I know Arturo's been doing a lot of work at improving the performance of the NRF52 SPI interfaces. So is there some reason why there'd now be a minimum speed for SPI? And so is this an issue? Should I file an issue on that? I can fix the problem by just changing the baud rate, but
it sounds to me like we just need to verify that the baud rate is actually what's coming out. Like if the driver's saying 100K but it's not 100K.
Oh, that's true. I'm setting it to 100K. I don't know what it's actually getting.
Right, but it might be that you're setting it to 1 megahertz or whatever, but it's not actually producing that, for example.
Right.
So it sounds like we just need to just double check the rates.
Okay, I'll put a note in an issue in with just what I found that
Sure.
It didn't work. It didn't give me any errors. It actually ran. It just gave me really weird results.
Huh.
It was clearly I'm returning a tuple, 3 values of the position and the pressure on the screen, and they would come out, but then they would sort of drift around. The columns would get out of order. It would clearly be dropping values, but no errors.
Yeah.
But then I also discovered another problem, which I will file an issue on unless somebody has a suggestion, and that is Control-C won't interrupt either the I2C version of that driver or the SPI. And so again,
on NRF.
On the NRF. So is that's I assume there's nothing, I was listening to the discussion about timeouts and loops. I mean, I don't think there's any way I should be able to get into a loop that I can't Control-C out of in the driver. Is that right? Okay.
Correct.
So I'll put an issue on that then.
Yeah.
Control-C works at the keyboard at normal places and under other things, but when I run that particular driver, at least under I2C or SPI, it won't Control-C out.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to check.
And again, that's clearly new with the new stuff. It wasn't the case under 3X. Okay, I'll write those up. And then, so now the real question I had was, when I find something like that, if Control-C is a problem and the SPI baud rate is an issue, should I just lump them together as new NRF issues, or should I write 2 issues?
2 issues, please.
Okay.
If they can be fixed separately, then 2 issues is better.
Okay.
And plus, when you check 2 things off, you feel more accomplished. At least I do.
Okay. And otherwise, it's working well. Just a couple of those little things. So.
How are you doing the REPL and stuff?
How?
Yeah. Are you doing through the J-Link?
No, just screen. I'm doing this on a Feather 52 screen. And I've been trying. I actually did get the DK board up and running, but that also comes up as a REPL just through screen. Through a typical screen connection like I normally do.
Huh? Is that through the user USB port?
Yeah. Well, it's the same USB port that the J-Link is plugged into. Not the J-Link. I'm not using it. I'm using the onboard J-Link.
Right.
Well, actually, I'm using the DFU bootloader. Sorry. No, sorry. On the DK board, the current release doesn't have the DFU serial bootloader in it. So on the DK board, I use the J-Link to flash it.
Right.
But then I use that same interface for the REPL.
Oh, okay.
On the Feather 52 832, I'm using the serial bootloader and that same interface for the REPL.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking that TAC had already enabled CDC over the user, like the NRF52 USB plug on the DK.
I don't, not in the current master, unless it just went in today.
I was looking on the USB boot, but are you using the NRF USB boot branch at all?
No,
okay.
No.
Okay.
So I'm using just a master branch.
Okay. Yeah, that's one thing we're working on, is trying to sort out the NRF stuff.
Right, I sort of let it stabilize, but if there's something you want me to try, I'd be happy to give it a shot.
No, I think at this point it's still just trying to figure out what the whether the workflow is going like we expect. Or not.
The J-Link flash works okay for now, just to test the board out, and that's so.
Yeah, that was my impression too. Is that the most important thing in my mind was actually getting CDC and mass storage working from CircuitPython.
There was a warning in the thing before on the when using that you had to disable the MSD on the J-Link interface.
Right.
Is that still necessary?
I have no idea.
Yeah. Oh.
No, we're like Dan and I are still getting ramped up on the NR stuff. So
one thing I would say, it doesn't the serial connection through the debug port on the DK doesn't work on Linux. Okay.
The serial, right.
So there was supposedly working, that might be in the branch, not in master, but it doesn't. There's some problem with the firmware, I think. I don't understand this.
So the DFU flash and the DFU gen, that doesn't work yet. Is that what you mean?
No, it works. It's just you're supposed to be able to talk to the REPL through the debug USB port. And it comes up as TTY-ACM0, but it doesn't work. You can't, when you type at it, nothing happens.
It works on mine. Well, but see the debug USB port though. So you use a different USB port than you have your.
There's the debug port that's on. There's the port that's on the short side.
The one right above the battery.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one is that's the J-Link port.
Right.
And there's a simulation of a USB serial device there, or there is. It takes. Right. It didn't work for me. Maybe this is fixed, but it didn't work for me to like just PicoCom or screen into that and talk to the REPL.
Oh,
on Linux.
On Linux, if I do just a regular flash CST and just use the J-Link flash to load the image into it.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, that works.
And
then I can screen into the REPL via TTY-ACM0.
On Linux.
Yes.
On that port on the short side.
On the same connection I was on.
Okay, that didn't work for me like a week and a half ago.
Okay, I think that's working now. I can double check.
All right.
Right, and there's two branches.
It worked for me on Windows, and it didn't work on Linux, and it worked on Mac. So it was clearly a Linux thing. I didn't change what was on the board in between those trials. So it was really odd. But I've seen similar complaints that these specialized J-Link boards sometimes have trouble with this serial port on Linux. That's in the forums on the Seger site or something like that. So. But I'll try again.
All right, let me know if you want me to try something. Yeah. I'll try to pull the board out too and test it.
Okay. Anything else people want to talk about? Or should we wrap up? We're over an hour, so we tend to stop around here. All right, I will wrap us up then after I take a time code. Okay, everybody, thanks for joining us for the Adafruit CircuitPython Weekly for July 9th, 2018. This happens every week on our Discord channel. You can join Discord for Adafruit through the URL adafru.it/discord. That will drop you into our text chat. Join the CircuitPython text chat to chat about CircuitPython all week long. And then on Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, everybody jumps in the voice chat and we talk about CircuitPython there. The video recording of the chat and the audio goes up on our YouTube channel every week, youtube.com/Adafruit. So check that out if you missed the meeting. You can ping me any status updates and hug reports you have if you're unable to make the meeting. Happy to read those off. Again, everybody's welcome, and I think that's it. We'll see y'all next week.
Thanks, everybody.
See you.